I was just going to say that the whole dive itself, though, because the current was so strong, that if you turned your head into the current, it would rip your regulator out of your mouth if you weren't gripping it with your teeth.
Right.
It was that strong.
Wow. Welcome to the Crossing It Off podcast, the internet's #1 bucket list show, where we believe your bucket list can be more than a social media brag, but bring you deep joy in your life. Each week we share the stories of people just like you that are living out their bucket/life goal list. I am your host, Roger Williams, and through hearing our guest adventures, my goal is that you will find inspiration and empowerment to add and cross items off your list. When you find something here that motivates you, we ask that you share this episode with one other person and rate and review the show. Let's get to crossing it off. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Crossing It Off podcast. I'm so excited that you're with us. I am super stoked to have my guest here with us. She has done something extremely interesting and something that I've never heard of before. So I think that's always a great thing for us to share with one another. Carrie Carter describes herself as inquisitive, quirky, an author, and a sumo lover. Very interesting. Carrie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So tell our listeners, what did you cross off your list?
I got to dive the blue corner in Palau.
Dive the blue corner in Palau. First off, have you dove before you went to Palau?
I had, but only really like one other big dive trip.
Okay.
In Australia, I dove the Great Barrier Reef. But because I was a newbie, I was on the newbie cattle boat.
Okay.
And they all take you to the basically ruined reef because they don't trust you. It still was pretty amazing.
Oh, I'm sure. And so did you get certified to dive before you went to Australia, or in the process? How did that work for you?
Yes, I got certified here in Houston, Texas, specifically for this trip. My husband worked for Continental Airlines at the time.
Oh.
And he's like, pick any place you want to go. I was like, Australia.
There you go.
So he's like, okay. And I was like, we got to dive if we're going to the Cairns.
Yeah.
Be right there at the Great Barrier. So we hurried up and got certified, but we didn't do our open water in Houston. We didn't have time. So we did our open water test in Australia.
Okay. And so you had to get all that done before you could dive in the Great Barrier Reef. And then so take us to why did all of a sudden Palau and the Blue Corner get on your list? Did you fall in love with diving in Australia, or was that something that was already in progress? What got you to think about putting Palau on your list?
Well, I did really like the diving, and I knew I wanted to do more of it. And because we had flight benefits, I was always looking at the flight map where all the different from Houston where I could go. And I was like, what's Palau? What is this place? It's also a place near it called Truck and Yap. I'm like, what are those? So I started researching them, and they're big dive destinations. They're out in the South Pacific. And, Trek is known for its manta rays, and Blue Corner's known for it. I mean, Palau's known for its World War II sites that are sunken ships and sunken planes.
Okay.
So I just started Googling it and researching it. And then I read about the Blue Corner. And the minute I read about it, I was like, I have to do that in my lifetime. I don't care if it's this year or 20 years from now or 50 years from now, and I'm 98 years old, I'm going to do it.
So what was it that you read that said that something popped in your brain going, oh, I'm doing that?
Well, they said 3 different ocean currents meet at that spot. And so there's always a high current, and there's just all these animals come there to feed, not animals, fish. Fish come there to feed. And they said there's over 1,400 different types of species of fish, and there's sharks, and there's rays. And they just said it's the most condensed amount of fish you'll see in one spot. And I was like, ooh, I want to see that,
Yeah. And so what was the time frame between these two dives for you? And did you have to recertify before you went to Palau, or is your certification something that sticks to you? I'm not a diver, so
I think they want you to do so many dives, if I remember correctly, within a year or 2 years. And, they want to keep you kind of fresh on it. And you can always do refresher courses. There's some people who will tell you, oh, that's a bunch of nonsense. You don't need that. And I'm like, You need it. I mean, going underwater, depending on a canister on your back to breathe, I
Right.
want to be on top of all my safety drills
No
just in
doubt.
case.
And just a quick question, did your husband dive with you or is this
He
something
did. He
okay.
did.
And this you picking the places and him going, yeah, I'll do it, or did he also have a desire to like get into diving and do this kind of thing?
He did want to do it. That part is true, but we're like really different dynamic personalities.
Hmm.
I'm really more kind of loosey-goosey laid back, and he's very like strict and you know. So he spent the whole time worrying,
Okay.
worrying about were we too deep? Are we going up too fast? And I'm just like, ooh, look, there's Neil.
Yeah, I think I would be worried too. I have snorkeled in some really really beautiful places, and I feel like that's about my speed. I don't know about diving. So you get to Palau and you're at the Blue Corner. What is that like for you? You know, getting ready to do this thing that you were like, I read something and I want to do this so badly. Was how much anticipation did you have? What were your feelings like before you got on that boat to get out to the dive site?
Well, it's interesting you asked that because before we went out to the dive site, the dive master told me we're not going.
Oh, geez.
I was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "I flew halfway around the world to dive this site." And she goes, "The currents are too strong." And she's like, "I don't think everyone's experienced enough." She's like, "You're not experienced enough." And I was like, "Oh, oh." And it must have looked sad or something because then she sighed and went over and got the other dive masters and they got in a little huddle. And she comes back, she goes, "Fine, we'll do it." So I was super hyped up about it.
Yeah, I imagine traveling. How long were the flights to get there?
Oh gosh, we had to fly from Houston to Japan, which is 14 hours.
Hmm.
And then from Japan to Guam, which is another 4 hours. And I believe it was 2 more hours to get to Palau.
Okay,
So
so
it's extensive traveling.
yeah, almost 20 hours, almost a whole day of traveling to get there. And what were you thinking when she said we're not going? Is it like, okay, we've got a couple more days to do this, or was this like that was it, like that was your chance?
I felt like a kid who just found out Santa didn't exist.
Oh,
I felt so crushed. But you know, you're supposed to be an adult about it. You're not supposed to
right.
cry. So I'm like, oh, it's okay. It's fine. But really, I was just like, I want to cry.
I imagine. I imagine. So they gave in
They did.
and you decided they take you out. And so you went out. Was the weather nice or was it just the current that was
It
bad? It
was it
was
was just the current. The weather
okay.
was fine. The water was calm. And I don't know how they normally do the dive because I've only did it that one time. But they had us go into the water. And then she's like, I want you to go 130 feet, which is below, further below than what we trained for.
Hmm.
And she goes, well, you need to go underneath the current
Ah, okay.
where there is no current. And then we're going to come back up once we get past it. And then you're going to get caught by the current. And then you're going to hook into the reef.
Okay. And so
Oh, and she didn't speak English very well.
whoa, okay.
She drew a lot of pictures on a piece of paper.
Okay. And so how do you have like a watch that tells you how deep you are and how far you've gone?
Yeah, you have
Okay.
gauges, or you can have
Okay.
digital gauges, you know. But yeah, they have stuff. And we were, like I said, there was two dive masters with us on this dive, so I felt comfortable having them there, you know.
And how many other divers besides the dive masters were with you? Was it like a huge group or was
It
it
was not. I think there's the two dive masters, me and my husband, and then four other people.
okay, so that's a pretty small group.
Yeah,
When you got out to the site to dive, were there other tourists there doing it or was
I didn't see any other tourists. We were the
wow.
only boat out
Okay.
there at that time.
So it's not a heavily trafficked area.
I don't think so. I mean, probably because it's so difficult to get out there too, you know.
Right.
If there's like some sort of direct flight you could get on from LA, it'd probably have more traffic.
True. True. Most people still have to get to LA though. So there's still a trek. Okay. So you get out there and you go down to the depth that they want you to and come back up. Everything goes okay.
Well, mostly okay.
Okay.
So when you go up, the current's supposed to catch you, and then you had a hook. They gave everyone a hook. There's a section of the reef that probably has been damaged, so you're supposed to hook onto that reef and then inflate your BC, you know, the vest you wear, so you can just float there like a big kite. And then you
Okay.
can just stay there and you watch all the fish and everything swim by. Only I missed the hook in, and there I
Oh,
am floating away, and I'm just like had this vision of being pulled out into the Philippine Sea or
oh
something.
my
And I'm like, oh
gosh.
no. But one of the dive masters came and got me and grabbed me and pulled me back and hooked me in.
Wow. And so this isn't like as much free diving, like roaming around. What's the difference between what you did in Palau and what you did at the Great Barrier Reef in Australia?
At the Great Barrier Reef, in the first initial dives we did, they kind of controlled it and they were watching us and they were having us do skills and whatnot. And then we did a couple of dives, but they just basically turned you loose. You went in the water and they counted you, and then they counted you when you got back up. You
Okay.
know,
And then in Palau, it's a lot different because you're hooked in and you're just,
yeah, because of the currents, and also because once you hook in, it's just like some sort of live entertainment. There's all these fish coming by. I must have saw 50 or 60 sharks just swimming around, and like everything imaginable is there, just swimming around, ignoring each other.
so there's no concern about the sharks. There's no,
I don't think at that depth. I think at that depth they're going to leave humans alone. At least
okay.
that's what they told us. Now, if that's a true statement or not, I don't
In
know.
broken English, that's what they told you. So for you, the difference between the two experiences, what made Palau so special for you?
Because there were just so many fish. I mean, I know lots of people like to see the big stuff, but I really
Uh,
like to see the little bitty things, the little bitty fishes and the eels, and like we saw like a bunch of little bitty eels pop out of the ground, and like I'm like they're so cute, which is probably what no one else would say, but
and you're close to the coral. When you're locked in, you can still see coral and stuff. It's not like you're out in the middle of
yeah, yeah.
like a big huge tank of water and just stuff floating around. You can still see
No,
the
you can still
coral and
see there's still lots of fish and coral, and and you're still pretty far down. I was just to say that the whole dive itself, though, because the current was so strong, that if you turned your head into the current, it would rip your regulator out of your mouth if you weren't
oh,
gripping it with your teeth.
right.
It was that strong.
Wow. And
Yeah.
did you just dive that day or were you able to dive more days or
No,
were
we did several dives during that
okay.
time. We dove someplace called the German Trench. It's kind of
Hmm.
shallow. That's where I saw all the little eels. And then there was like one sort of coral, and like the manta rays come there. I call it the manta ray spa. They'd come and hover, and all these other fish would come out of the coral and then start cleaning them.
Oh wow. So is this something where you're taking a camera, you're getting pictures, or is it
I
just
did
you're
not,
okay.
they had a class they offered, like an digital underwater class you could take.
Hmm.
And I didn't do it, and I regret not doing it. I really wish I had done it. Here's another side note that was kind of
Uh-huh.
interesting. So we're getting there at the dive shop, and we're gonna schedule ourselves to dive the next day, set all that up. And we're walking out, and I hear a woman talking, da 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 da. And I was like, man, that sounds like my friend Barbara. And I was like, you know what? I'm going back. I'm gonna see if it's her.
Here at the Crossing It Off podcast, we are passionate about inspiring you in your bucket list lifestyle and empowering you to live out your list. We offer many resources to assist you in your bucket list journey, such as web resources in the show notes, bucket list mentoring services, my book Live Out Your Lists, a private Facebook group for you to share your bucket list success stories with others, and more. All of these can be found at crossingitoffpodcast.com. Find the resource that fits your need so that you can live out your list. Now back to the show.
Guess what? It was her.
Oh my gosh.
She had been
And
relocated for work for a year in Indonesia, and she had taken a vacation with her boyfriend to Palau. And we
wow.
just happened to meet at the dive shop.
That's a one in a million chance at least. That's pretty awesome. What else about Palau was, besides the diving, what else was interesting to you or that you got to experience while you were there?
We did a kayaking tour where you kayak between the little islands and they look like mushrooms. And it is super just calming and peaceful. Like it's probably one of the most peaceful things I've ever done. I was just so relaxing. And then we snorkeled, and we're snorkeling, and it's overcast that day, so it's not real sunny. And the woman goes, well, look for little mandarin fish. She's like, they're really 6 inches, 3 inches long, bright colored fish. I'm like, all right. And I see about six or seven. I didn't think anything of it. And then when I get back home, I saw a National Geographic documentary where there's about this dive crew looking for new species of fish. And on their off day, they wanted to see mandarin fish. And they talk about how difficult it is to see
Wow.
them. I was like, oh, I saw a whole bunch of them.
And was that, did you plan just to take some time off from diving to go do
Yeah,
those kind of things?
we weren't going to dive like every single day. So,
Hmm.
we did that and we explored the island itself, and you can see a lot of the World War II bunkers and just machine guns and stuff that's just randomly left. And it's a
Right.
stark reminder. You're like, oh man, this is like, because it used to be called Palau. So the battle
Hmm.
there, it's like during World War II.
And how did you find your experience in Palau? Was it, with locals and, being a tourist? How did that go for you?
I think it went great because we also don't hesitate to talk to the locals. Like one guy we were talking to, and he's like, well, let me show you my hometown and meet my family. And he's like, get in the car, which is probably a bad idea in hindsight. But
Uh,
we're like, okay, let's go.
yeah, no, I don't necessarily know it's a bad idea. I mean, it's a pretty small island. It's not like, people are
Yeah.
going to get away with a whole lot. So, and I think that, my experience traveling is that people are, kind like that just because they want to be kind like that. They're,
Yeah, I think he wanted to show off like, how they lived. And it was kind of interesting because he's like, we have a large family and one person works and the rest of us fish and play basketball. I was like, oh man, I'd hate to be that one person.
yeah, maybe hopefully they'll take turns. So, Carrie, what were some of the other like locations or things that you got to see? You talked about this being a real World War II era space. Was there anything else that you got to see while you were there, while you were diving besides coral?
Yes, we did dive a World War II plane that had crashed, and it's it's a difficult to me that was the more difficult dive than the blue corner. And it's not very deep, but because of the silt and all the sand, you have to be very careful or you stir it up. And then within seconds, you can't see anything because it's all floating around. But yeah, you
And
can actually go into the plane and see all I guess they call them lionfish swimming in there. Of
and
course,
was there just one plane, or was it like a whole graveyard?
it was just the one where we dove. But
Hmm.
if you want to do that route instead of seeing fish, there's all sorts of things you can just do nothing but wreck dives.
You get it. You've done this for a couple days now. You've dived, and you've basically crossed it off your list. What was that experience like for you? What was your mindset after you had completed doing this dive in the Blue Corner in Palau?
As soon as I got done, we got on the boat, I was like, let's do it again. And everyone else on the boat goes, no way.
They weren't excited about the currents as you were.
I don't think they liked it that much.
Yeah. Did you find it as fulfilling as you thought you would after reading that stuff about it before you left? Did it meet your expectations?
More so because it's something you don't ever get to see. We don't go underwater and
Hmm.
look at fish, or very rarely do we go
Right.
underwater. Like, so to be in that environment was just special, and you see everything. And as you float back out to get out of the current in the water, there's all these little, I don't know what they're called, blackfish, and they're all like waving their fins, and it looks like they're telling you goodbye.
Yes. And so if somebody else was going to do this, if you were talking to somebody at the Starbucks and they said, oh, I want to do that, or that's been on my bucket list for a while, what's the one thing you would say, okay, if you're going to go dive Palau and the Blue Corner, you got to do what?
Insist on it. Because they might be like, no, we're not going to go because of the
Ah,
currents or whatnot, but you
okay.
just insist on it. Just
And
like, can we do it tomorrow? Can we do it the next day? Just keep on and on about it until they let you say, okay, fine, we'll go
is
because it's
there a,
worth it.
yeah, I imagine, is there a better time of year that the currents aren't as strong, or is that like all the time? It doesn't matter when you go, it's going to be the case.
I think it varies a lot. And I read something that the moon phase also will affect it.
Mm,
So it just depends on the time of year, time of day, even time of day. Yeah, because like, some currents come in at 11 and some come in the
sure.
afternoon.
Very, very cool. What was something that you took away as far as like being transformed about this? What was something that if you walked away and thought to yourself, "Wow, this really changed me," what would that be?
As humans, we take too much for granted for just other nature, and we don't respect it. And we should be doing everything we can to protect these fish and these dive sites and the sharks because they have a right to be here just as we do. So it really kind of drove it home like this is important. And I was like, I wish every kid graduating from high school could go there and dive it because I think it would change the world
Yeah.
because it would change your perspective on, nature. And I think that would change future outcomes like how we just deal with things.
Yeah, for sure. I think doing travel early is always good. My
Of course,
kids
that'd be
have.
a little bit expensive perspective prospect to
Yeah,
do.
yeah, for sure. There's probably some people that just like every, you know, high school freshman to go to Washington D.C. That would be fantastic for them to, see how the country works and see some of the history. So while you were there, you talk about this need for people to see the world from a different perspective, and diving definitely offers that and gain this respect for other species that we're trying to share this with. Was there anything in particular that you saw or experienced while you were in Palau that was conservation minded? Was there anything that maybe you didn't see in Australia? We always hear about the Great Barrier Reef only has so many years left, before it's going to vanish because of humans. Was there anything in Palau where they were trying to reverse that or make that slow that process down?
Well, there's a couple of things. Like when I was there, they kind of implied that they limit the number of divers that
Mm.
can dive. So that's probably a good part. And they also said some divers from certain countries are very destructive.
Hmm.
And so they're only allowed to dive one site, which I thought was
Interesting.
interesting. If you
Yeah.
did that here, you'd get into a bunch of trouble.
Well, yeah. But that's starting to be kind of the norm with some of these touristy places where
Mm,
there's lots of people. Like you have to have a permit to go to Machu Picchu now, and I mean, and some people are talking about Angkor Wat becoming that same way because
yeah.
there's so much tourism overrunning because airlines are so flying everywhere for anything. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that they're doing something to kind of at least slow it down. So that's good.
I was going to add one more thing about the conservation is
Okay.
Palau is a very mineral rich island.
Hmm.
They could come in there and mine it and probably make a whole lot of money, but they choose not to. There's only like small sections that they mine, and they're like, that's it, that's all we're doing. So I think that's, interesting that they chose to do that over money.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, and that's again, it's you know, managing those resources is an important part of for all of us to keep this big blue marble spinning. Carrie, what is something else that's on your bucket list? It could be dive related or not. It's up to you. But is there something else on your list that you'd like to cross off?
Yes, I'll just pick one out of the hundreds of things I have on my list. But I really want to go to Tahiti in July because they have hopefully I say this correctly. They have what they call a heva, Ori heva, and it's a big dance competition. Like there'll be 100 people in the group and they will go and they'll dance like an hour and they'll do individual dances and group dances and they have contests for like singing and music and they even have like horse racing and artists are there. It's a big thing and it goes on for like over a month and I really want to see that.
Wow, I've never heard of this before, and so I have to ask, where do you find this event? How did you learn about it?
I just happened to cross it on YouTube one day because there's a French Polynesian channel and they put up all the big groups that are competing live. Well, not live, but they put it up on YouTube so you can watch it. And it's just the costumes are amazing and the dancing's amazing. And they say when you go into the stadium to watch it, you can smell flowers because all the
Because
costumes are made from
wow,
plant materials. And like the people will get there together as a group with family and friends and they'll gather up the flowers and everybody makes their own costume.
that's incredible. And so what drew you to that? If when you first saw it on YouTube or whatever, what was the thing that drew you to wanting to put that on your list?
I like dancing and music. And when there's like lots of people on stage dancing. That's what I want to see. I'm like, oh, yes, there's 500 people tap dancing at once. I like seeing stuff like that. I don't want to say it's spectacle, but that's probably not quite the right word, but it's impressive that many
Right.
people together, not messing up.
Yeah. For sure. Well, that's a very, very interesting item to have on your list. I hope you get to cross it off one day. Carrie, tell us where can we, follow your travels or get more information about you and what you're doing.
Well, I have a website for the book I wrote, which is called Whiskers Abroad, which is about a woman and her cat who traveled to Japan. So I have a blog there and I'll update events about, stuff about travel and just this and that. So you can follow me there,
And what's the name of that? Okay.
carriecarterwrites.com.
Awesome. And we will put that, and I think I have a couple of other items, places, socials for you that I'll put on the show notes so that people can just click away on those and get to you. Carrie, thank you so much for being here. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I'm excited that you went someplace unique, it sounds like, to go do your dive experience. And I hope you have a lot more interesting adventures crossing stuff off your bucket list.
Well, thank you for having me, and I definitely hope I get more bucket list items crossed off.